Hi, Anne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, thanks.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you. It's been a long time that we've really, caught up with what we're both doing.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What have you been up to?
Ah, a lot of stuff actually. Just working with Roger on some stuff, and I'm retired from the U, and
Gathered
that's
that.
been great.
Oh, good. I'm
I
looking
wish
forward to
I'd
it.
done it a little earlier. What are you up to?
Well, I just, after 12 years, decided to step down as associate dean.
Uh-huh.
So I went through my pre-tenure period, got tenure, and immediately became um, associate dean. So
Wow.
I've never really been kind of a regular faculty member.
Oh,
And
does
I'm
anybody know?
and I'm just a few years away from retiring myself. And I thought, I should give it a try before, I head out here. Let's
Right.
gonna add Alex here.
Okay.
Hi, Alex.
Hey Keith, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Just wrapped up a class on public budgeting and finance for my MPA, and got a
Oh,
2-week break before the intensive course. So looking forward to it.
well, that's good. Do you know Anne? You guys met before?
I don't know that we have, but your name is so familiar to me. I don't know why, but your name's very familiar. Anyway, I'm Ann
Well,
Floor. It's nice to
and
meet
it's a pleasure to meet you. Nice to meet you as well.
you.
And how goes your day so far?
Pardon me?
How goes your day so far?
It's going fine. Lots of snow,
Oh, I know.
Yeah, and there's more coming down right now.
Yep, it is.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, Keith. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. We're all on Zoom today. This is just like so 2021.
I know.
Hi, Jenna. My name's Ann Floor. I don't think we've met, have
Oh,
we?
hi, Anne. I don't think we've met before. I'm just a student in this class. Are you
Just a student.
Anne is one of our presenters today. Jenna is in her second year as a master student in our planning program
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
working in the city council office, and really happy to have Jenna as also a student in this class.
Great.
Yeah, Anne, do you live in Salt Lake City?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. It's her zip code's right there.
Yeah, that's what I was
No, I don't
thinking.
know why that's on there.
Just in case somebody wanted to mail you something.
Yeah, I guess so.
Everyone's joining the crowd today. So Matt, I'll make you a co-host so you can help out with the management of the participants. Hello, Curtis. How are you? Nice to see
Hello.
you.
Doing good, doing good.
Great.
Hey,
Great.
Curtis, it's Ann Floor. We met with Roger at
Yes,
Katrina.
that's
Good to see you
right.
again.
Vishali, how are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. And there's Michael from Moab. So for our presenters, we are a statewide class now. Alex
Oh,
took
wow.
Alex took this class last year, and when we were in our beta phase, and it was mainly just in the Salt Lake Valley area, but we've gone statewide now.
That's awesome. How's this year gone so far?
Very well. Well, I mean, you have to ask the students. From my perspective, I think it's gone extremely well. It's, as you know, it's a project-based class, and with project-based work, it's this kind of hopefully managed chaos, and so
That actually sounds good.
I think I know it is for students, it is for faculty too. And so, but we're rolling down. We're down to the last, we have 3 more sessions after tonight. And
Oh,
one of those is a field trip. Hopefully it won't snow on our field trip.
where are you going?
We're going to 900 South and 200 West. That's where we're going.
The tracks line.
Feel like you have
No.
that in balance.
That fun front runner slash
Now,
S line, or not S line, what is it, 9 line?
No, this is, it's the 9 line. So this
Yeah.
is the 900 South reconstruction project. This is our destination. So,
Now, are you going to take a look at that?
oh yeah, that's the
That's
reason-
been
that's
going
a-
on a long time.
that's why we're going to go.
That's good. I'd like to read your report when you're through.
I don't know if we'll have a report. We're just going to go and hopefully we're going to ask some of the people who designed the project to talk to us about all the ins and outs of how it went and successes and failures, because those are all part of project work. And we'll maybe learn a thing or two about how projects go. You're right. It has been going on forever, because that's one of the ways projects go, is that they go on forever.
And isn't that just half of it? Isn't there another half of the road to do?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, I guess you'll find out.
I'm learning along with everyone else. I can observe it from walking the street and occasionally driving on it, and I can see what's going on, but I want to learn more too. So people are filtering in. This will probably happen over the next 5 or 10 minutes. We'll give it a few minutes
Sure.
for more folks to show. There are about 30. Alex, you were asking how the project or how the class was going this year. We have about 31, 32 students. And so it's
Right.
comparable to last year's class. And it's been a longer class. We are 12 weeks now instead of last year we were 8. And right at this point of the semester, I can kind of feel it. It's like, oh yes, this one is a longer one than the last time, but that's helpful for students working on their projects. That's for sure. Hey, then people are turning on their cameras. I'm going to recommend that people do that. We're all on Zoom, as you know, tonight, and we have 4 guests that are going to be having a discussion with us, and hoping everybody will join in the discussion. And I realize people have different circumstances, and so this is not I'm not trying to should you here. Just trying to suggest a bit of, I don't know, community engagement by turning on your cameras. So I haven't asked for it all semester, but I figured this time maybe it would be a good time to do it. So if you're thinking about it, push the button. So Michael, is it snowing in Moab today again?
Hold on. Wait, oh my God. Wait, I'm trying to get to you.
Okay.
Can
it's
you hear
not
me?
snowing in Moab, it's snowing in the mountains right now.
Oh, there's
though.
Kevin. Yeah, not snowing in Moab. That's good. I got to drive down that way in a couple of days, and it's supposed to snow on Wednesday. It's like, what? This
Yes,
is
but we're having a huge dust storm, massive dust storm.
You
crazy.
should probably, no, it's okay. I just had to turn my Zoom go on. Okay, what were you
That's
saying?
crazy. That's crazy. When are the locusts coming? Are they next?
Yeah, I mean, look, the sky is
Oh, cool.
dust.
Oh my gosh, look
Oh,
at that.
wow.
I can see that. Wow, that's outrageous. Man.
Wow.
Okay. Well, Bianca is here. Welcome, Bianca.
Hello, everyone.
How are you today?
I'm doing okay. How about
Good.
you?
Doing great, doing great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're already almost 5 minutes past the top of the hour, and we're up to 24 people, and I expect another handful to join us along the way. This is our last, what do you want to call it? Presentation-oriented session. That is until next week when you all are going to be doing the presentations, and we'll talk about that in the second hour, because next week and the week after are the two final presentation sessions for our class, and you guys are going to be presenting your projects. I've been talking with a bunch of you about your projects last week and then in between class sessions, and it's a great bunch of projects. This is going to be so fun and so impressive, and you guys have done great work and you have fabulous ideas. And one of the things that we'll be talking about along the way is, what do you do afterwards? What's your encore? Where do you take these ideas that you've come up with to the next level and try to get changes happening on the ground? Because that's what it's all about. We're trying to change the world here. Tonight is a new thing. We didn't do this last year for last year's class. And when we extended the length of the semester, it used to be 8 weeks. Last year it was 8 weeks long, which is not very long. And when we extended it to 12 weeks, as we did for this semester, this was kind of first thing on my list to add in, was a session on advocacy, because that's what this class is all about. We're learning about transportation planning and how projects emerge in our communities, but we're also learning how to make proposals for projects and how to kind of engage with decision makers about our ideas for things that should happen in our communities. And that's, you are necessarily talking about advocacy when you talk about such subjects. And so tonight we've been, I guess, dancing around the subject of advocacy. Tonight we're going to just take it on straight ahead, full bore. And to do that, I've asked 4 experts in the field to come and share with you their insights about what makes for effective advocacy, because that's, after all, what we're about, right? How do you, not just how do you advocate, but how do you advocate effectively? And we can define what effectiveness is, and there are lots of different ways to look at it. But ultimately, people engage in advocacy because they want to see change. They want to see things improve in their communities, problems addressed, issues solved, opportunities leveraged. And so that's why you do it. So we're going to talk tonight about some of the keys to effective advocacy. And I want to introduce our panel tonight. Curtis Haring is a Utah native, graduated from a fine institution, University of Utah, in political science for 20 years. He's been involved in a number of political campaigns and nonprofit organizations at a multiple of different levels of agencies and governments, with jobs ranging from manager to volunteer to policy analyst. He's really been across the map here. Curtis is the executive director of the Utah Transit Riders Union, which, if you've not heard of the Transit Riders Union, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a transit system that is working to make transit reliable, accessible, comfortable, efficient, and affordable, all while fostering a transit affirmative culture. That's a great mission statement. Bianca Paulino is a long-range planner with the Great Salt Lake Municipal Services District. who we heard from a couple weeks ago. She is a library worker at the Kearns Library. She's passionate about community engagement and organizing, specifically with marginalized communities. She's interested in environmental justice on the west side of Salt Lake. Alex Cragun, his biggest claim to fame is he is an alum of this class from last year. And he's got a few other things in his bio also to note. He's been involved in issue advocacy and community action for over a decade. His involvement ranges from healthcare to food system policy. Alex is a founding board member of the Utah Transit Riders Union and currently on the board of Sweet Streets. He's worked in federal and state advocacy for community health center programs and fought to increase access to federal nutrition programs, and served as Salt Lake City's Board of Trustee for UTA. He, in fact, took a seat that I vacated. So, and he served it very well and did a better job than I did. He served as the executive director for the Utah Democratic Party, and he's a lifelong public transit user and enthusiast, you can tell. Ann Floor has been co-chair for Utahns for Better Transportation, better known as UBET, since 1995. Ann's been in advocacy and worked on campaigns against the Legacy Parkway, the original Legacy Parkway, and ultimately worked on the redesign of that facility. So it was a much better facility, as well as similar campaigns to alter the Mountain View Corridor and the West Davis Highway projects. She's formerly the publications editor from the University of Utah Development Office and an associate editor for Continuum Magazine. So that's our panel. And, you know, we could have probably had 40 or 50 people on this panel. There are so many people that are working on these issues. What I tried to do was to provide a panel that is mixed. A mix of people who have been working in the field for a while. Some people who have been working in the field are new to the field and have just been doing it more recently. Tried to get in a number of different transportation modes and different perspectives. You can be the judge on how good a job I did on that. But I think we're going to have an interesting conversation. And so what I'd like to invite our students to do, and maybe I should pause here and let our presenters know that our students come from all over the state and all over really Utah in a lot of different ways. We have University of Utah registered students who are taking this class for credit, but we also have a number of what we call community students who are people who have just signed up to take this class because they're passionate about transportation issues and want to see change in their communities. And so we really do represent a pretty broad spectrum here. What I'd love to see happen is to have some discussion among our panelists, but also to have some discussion from the students. And so I don't know, panelists, if you're up for this, it could get a little, I don't know, rough and tumble here, but I think we're up for it. It's a pretty rustic setting tonight with all the snow coming down. It would be nice just to have a kind of a general dialogue about what advocacy is and how to do it well. So I'll start with our four panelists, with Ann and Alex and Curtis and Bianca. And I sent you some questions, some prompts in advance. And so hopefully those have been ruminating and rolling around in your heads a little bit. And we'll start with kind of the happy face of advocacy. Everyone who's an advocate has what I would call like a 3-beer story. You know, it's not just a beer story, but it's a 3-beer story, meaning it takes that long to get through it, at least the way they tell it. And by the time you're done with the 3rd beer and you've come to the end of the story, everyone is singing your praises, at least because they've had 3 beers. But maybe also because of the tremendous success that you've had I've got my own. And if you, I can actually tell the story without 3 beers these days. That's just because I'm older. I'm kind of a lightweight drinker. But let's go for, what are your big wins? Where did you, really find your most satisfying outcome? And what did you learn from that? What did you take away? Because it's, it's great to win. That's, a value in and of itself, of course. But when you reflect on that win, was there something that you took away from it? You thought, okay, I've learned something about how to do this and maybe how to do it better next time, or to leverage what I've already been able to do. So I'm going to start first with Curtis. Can you share with us, where's your big win? It doesn't have to be transportation. I know a lot of you have worked in a variety of different public policy fields. Where's your biggest win?
Yeah, no, of course you start with me, right? No, it's, I will start actually with transportation. And more specifically, when I came on with UTRU a little bit over a year ago, unfortunately, COVID had hit very hard. It hit the organization very hard. And frankly, the organization kind of went fallow for a little while. And so I was brought on just kind of as this idea to rejuvenate and revitalize the organization, and really kind of get it back on its feet. Things were so bad that we'd even lost things like membership rosters. Like it was bad. And so really over the past year, it was encouraging to get our numbers not only back to where they were before COVID, but also to start exceeding those. And getting more membership and getting more people involved and getting more chapters set up through UTRU. That's something that we've been doing now, and really just kind of expanding the overall capacity of the organization. I take personal pride in that, as far as really making sure that we're spearheading and poking people and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing on that. And so the 3 beers is definitely, as far as like what that nitty gritty looked like. It was going out, it was shaking hands, it was talking to people. It was making sure that we increase the visibility. It's being snarky on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? But as far as a recent victory, as far as advocacy is concerned, it's really making sure, or it's really rebuilding that organization, rebuilding those connections, getting more people involved with the organization to not only be where we were when pre-COVID, but also exceed that. So I take personal pride in that, as far as kind of some of the victories that we had, is really making sure we hunker down and make sure that we are a force to be heard.
So institutional capacity. That's
correct.
That's a really interesting take. Bianca, what about you? Where do you find your kind of your moment of joy?
Yeah, so I worked as a community organizer with United Way. I actually see Madison here, who was my old supervisor for that. And kind of one of the biggest projects that really kind of stayed with me was doing like a art community engagement project, where we were able to talk with different youth in Kearns who the project was about gathering different pictures in their community about different places that they felt safe in, or that they would like to see changed, and different questions like that. Just having kids kind of analyze and really be out there and kind of like document their experiences. And this project was really special to me because I had also grown up in Kearns, and I think oftentimes you kind of experience the built environment with all these rules about what it's supposed to be like. And for me, it's really a good experience being able to have kids document these things and really kind of talk about them, about what places they don't feel safe. For example, if there's like a busy street and why they don't enjoy going to that street, or places that they do feel safe in, where they're able to feel comfortable walking or skating or biking. And even following up with those kids and those connections made from that project. Like now when there's different input going out for like projects, like parks that they want to see improved, and keeping up that connection with them, even if it's been months from now, just knowing that these community engagement efforts weren't just to get community input, but really to follow through with them and really kind of keep that conversation going and those experiences going. So for me, that one would be, I think, the one that I would consider my success.
I've seen photos from the exhibit that you guys did, the installation you guys did. It was really impressive. That's great work. How about you, Anne? What are you going to choose? You've got so many to choose from.
You know, I think I'll start off with Legacy Highway because that was my initial kind of falling into this. I had been meeting with Roger Borganet as part of the job I had with what later became Envision Utah. And we talked so much about transit and the need for more transit and how no one was listening. And so decided to have a gathering of people at the Salt Palace. And so when was it? Let's see, in 95, was that long ago? You guys probably weren't born yet. But we had
That's 1995
Yeah.
for those of you some of you who are wondering.
right. Anyway, we ended up having about 25 presenters, and they were from all different areas of the city and walks of life. But they were committed to transit and looking at transportation in a new way. And it was very successful. We had a lot of people show up, and it sort of started the conversation toward transit for the first time. And at that point, our governor wouldn't even say the T word, transit. It just wasn't part of his vocabulary. But anyway, that was the beginning of our effort with getting more transit in Salt Lake, and it led to work with the Legacy Highway.
Interesting, another kind of institutional reference here. And I think you guys are already anticipating my last question that I sent you, which was the role of coalition building, because you're starting with that as your primary theme. That's cool. Alex, how about you?
For myself, it would probably have to be my first sort of like foray in public transportation advocacy. I had taken the train home from Salt Lake City to, at that time I was living in Taylorsville, missed my last connection bus, the number 32 bus the number 54. Anyway, missed it. There was somebody who was getting groceries there. They weren't able to get home, essentially. Called them a cab, and I walked home the hour it took, and spent a lot of time thinking about this as like this was a barrier for folks. It was something that was a regular experience for members of the community, and was wondering why there wasn't really a lot of folks out there. UTRU during this time was in its very early phases, and so I started getting involved and remember that there's this thing called moveon.org, put together a petition with regards to public transportation, so particularly around late nights and weekends, and presented that to the UTA board. And with that, there was an additional challenge called the 7-day UTA challenge, and challenged the then 16 board members of the UTA to utilize public transportation, and it became a whole thing. It became like this sort of impetus in terms of an ongoing conversation with members of the media, with members of the public, with UTA, with regards to social equity in public transportation. Prior to that time period, when you talked about public transportation in the media, it was about tourism, it was about the economy, about jobs, about getting people from Sandy to the Delta Center. It was never really about equity of service. And to me, like that was like one of many other steps that shifted back to the focus of public transportation as a social good, as a social service that should be frequent and affordable for all.
I remember it well. I was on the board. I received that pitch, and it was so effective. You were so great, and board members did it. We did the 7-day challenge. Some of us had already been doing a challenge like that and continue longer than 7 days. But I don't know if you know this, Alex, but it affected the staff too, because there were members of the staff that also took the challenge. There was one person who approached me who she was an observant Roman Catholic, and it was time for Lent. And she said, I am so inspired. I am going to give up my car for Lent. And so she just rode the bus and tracks and walked and didn't use her car for that whole 6 weeks. And she said it was transformative. So that's great.
That's awesome. I did not know that.
She was pretty private about it, but I won't tell you who it was. Well, that's great. Now that we've talked about our successes, of course, you know what's coming next, because advocacy is by definition mainly about failure. I mean, if you're counting wins and losses, an advocate's life is a life that has more L's than W's. And that's just the nature of the activity. And you go into advocacy, and if you stay in advocacy, you do it because you figured out some sort of way to be able to persevere through the many setbacks that happen inherently as part of an advocate's life. And so the question is, what role has failure played in defining how you do advocacy? And I guess, what do you learn from failure? What do you learn about the misses, the tried and missed attempts? Where does that go after you're done and you're kind of picking up the pieces and trying to pull it together to charge up the hill again? So this time, maybe we'll start with Anne, and we'll try to mix it up in different orders each time. So Anne, what about failure?
So what I'm thinking of is the West Davis Freeway. We had this idea that rather than building another freeway, why not just have some feeder roads that go from the small towns in Davis County over to I-15 and provide connecting routes. And so we met with communities for 2 years, maybe 3. It was a long time. And it ended up that the people there just it didn't ever sell to them. But it was included in the, as one of the possibilities. And it actually came back with very good marks on, that it would have made sense or not. And it came back with good marks. And then they said, well, wait a second, we needed to tweak something that we didn't do. And so anyway, it was bad because we saw the numbers, we saw the modeling they did, and the numbers showed that it would have been a viable option. But when they reran the model, and it took, a few months, it came back as a failure. So that was a lot of work and a lot of hardship, putting in that much effort and having it just drop when actually we felt like it actually succeeded. But the good thing was we met so many great people in Davis County and got to know what they were interested in and what their concerns were. And a lot of them, had their property taken for legacy and just devastating things. And it was a real honor to meet them, talk with them, hear their stories, try to do what we could do to bring in people for them to talk to. But that was a failure in the long run. So,
Alex, what about you? Where has failure been a good teacher to you?
This one isn't public transportation related. This goes back to my professional career. I was working for the association Utah Community Health, doing their policy and advocacy there. And this was during legislative session, during the appropriation phase of the legislative session. And I was pushing for some one-time funding for what they refer to as the loan repayment program for physicians working in rural communities. So places like Vic now, places like Beaver, Utah, there are community health centers in those areas where people don't have access to doctors. They're hours away. And I spent so much time putting together letters of support from cities, from county commissioners, going and getting constituents to go and engage with the Social Services Appropriations Committee. I thought I had it set. I thought it was good to go. And it turned out that the chair of the committee just didn't like the program. And so it was ranked low enough to not be funded. And the lesson I learned from that was to count every vote, leave no stone unturned. You have any doubts in your where you're at, where you stand, reach out and ask. Because if you don't, you're going to learn something otherwise.
Yeah. Got to do your homework. Yeah, that's right. Bianca, where have you met failure, and what did you take from it?
For me, what comes to mind is right now with the Greater Salt Lake MSU, we're working on a currents mobility hub, and we're really trying to get the public involved. And I think public engagement can be really hard when a lot of people don't have time for these public workshops or surveys. I think a lot of it, especially in planning, is really not accessible in different ways, whether it's language or terms or concepts. And I think a lot of times it can be really hard to explain these things, especially if it's long-term, like long-range planning, where they're kind of just concepts and they're not really things right now that people are experiencing or dealing with. So I think a lot of it has been when having these public engagement efforts, even getting people to show up. But even when you are having these public engagement experiences, is that maybe it's not, you're not going to get these results through like a survey or a workshop, but having those one-on-one communications and like connections. So I think for me, it's been like learning that I think the one-on-one is where you really get to hear people's experiences, and being able to kind of just get to know them a lot better, which I think usually you really get to know the different challenges they're dealing with, especially with transportation and how their everyday life is impacted by it. So I think that would be for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Curtis, similar story, something different.
I mean, so the one that comes to mind is kind of the biggest failure was in a previous life. I was the executive director of Fair Boundaries, which was kind of the iteration of Better Boundaries, dealing with gerrymandering, but this is a decade and a half ago at this point. You know, and it was a failure. We had to get, you know, something like 93,000 signatures. We only got about half of that. And largely that was due to the fact that we just didn't have the infrastructure in order to handle the job that we were trying to do. I came on after the organization had kind of been founded and saying, hey, this is something that, you know, we think would be a good idea. For those of you that don't know, it basically dealt with gerrymandering, right? So how political boundaries are drawn. And, you know, I signed on because I was a firm believer that gerrymandering was a bad thing. I wanted to do what I needed to do in order to fight that. And then rapidly kind of became aware of the fact that, hey, we just do not have the resources to take on this behemoth. And so the lesson I kind of took away from that is, you know, especially in advocacy and organizing, make sure it is good to stretch and it is good to reach, but make sure that you are choosing goals that are obtainable and that you have the resources available to obtain those goals. Or if you don't, make sure that you are drawing in as many people as you can, as rapidly as you can to get there. You know, that was a very finite thing. Like we had to get signatures by a certain amount of time or we failed. But even in longer term advocacy, the lesson that I really got from that one is know your resources, know how to use them effectively, stretch, try to push yourself, but don't reach so far for the stars that you miss other opportunities that you might be able to take advantage of.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you need those early and kind of lower value wins to kind of build up. You have, you know, to build momentum. So I absolutely agree with that. Well, this is my last canned question, and then we really will turn it into a free for all. No, it will be very measured, I'm sure. But my last kind of canned question is, given failure, given what motivates everyone who is an advocate to get involved in advocacy, what do you do with, some people would call it frustration, others would call it anger? I mean, you're not an advocate because everything's hunky-dory, right? You don't go into advocacy because you think everything's just working fine. You go into advocacy because you think things are, kind of messed up and you want to see a change. And if they're messed up, and it's not enough just that they're messed up, and by golly, someone's got to do something about it. And I am going to take the plunge. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to fight that fight. And that's beautiful. It's heroic. It's the human spirit. It's, there's so many wonderful things about it. And it can also be poisonous. It can also be toxic. And so particularly if you're angry and you're frustrated and you want to see change in the world and you don't like the status quo, and as we were just saying, failure is going to be a bigger part of your life than success. This can lead to, figurative or literal ulcers. And so how do you take care of yourself? But also, how do you want to keep that energy? You want to keep the motivation going. You don't want to become milk toast all of a sudden and tap out. On the other hand, you also want to be effective. And because that is the underlying theme here. And sometimes I have experienced myself and observed in others that sometimes this heartfelt desire for seeing change can sometimes kind of get in the way. So how do you deal with it, and how do you turn on the good and try to manage the not so good? Alex, what's your solution to this?
One, when it comes to dealing failure for myself, is I have to remind myself that change is a marathon and not a sprint. Unfortunately, something I've struggled with for a long time, particularly early in my career. I was, wanted to see rapid change in the United States, and we're definitely not where I thought we would be at where I'm at now in terms of my age, and it's very frustrating. And how do I deal with that? Is through continuing to organize, continuing to be engaged, to come together with my community, to commiserate together. Nothing is better than going and getting together for a lunch or a cup of coffee or a beer after a massive failure and just talking absolute crap on the elected officials that are denying that change, and to bemoan their incompetence. That, to me, that is one way to keep hope alive, is to know that there are others who share my thoughts, share my values, who may not be in a place in which they can make those decisions, but maybe one day they will. And so I would say I keep hope alive by trashing those that we decide to elect as our leaders.
Just making sure there's no open mic nearby.
Exactly.
And what about you? How do you deal with anger?
I think about the opportunity to meet with your group, the people that you're working with, the coalition of people, and getting energy back from them, from each other, getting it out there so it's not hanging in your body, and express your anger and frustration and stomp around, but have it end up in a discussion that can lead forward. And I'm a part of the group right now that is opposing the inland port, and that is an incredible group of 35 people who keep inspiring each other. One thing goes down, and anyway, it's been very interesting to watch the dynamics of that group, because there are a lot of different people with different backgrounds and different strengths, but the inspiration keeps coming through. So
wow, yeah,
I think it's important to get the anger out so you have room for the to keep going.
So and you're such an inspiration. That's what a kind of battle of the titans you're engaged in. That's a big one.
Yeah, but it's going quite well. I mean,
well, and that's
there's
because you
always
guys,
something new popping up, but yeah,
you guys have stuck
feel
with
like
it.
we're a really good group of people.
You've stuck with it, that's for certain. So Bianca, what about anger? How do you deal with anger?
Yeah, I think this is like a more of a dark note on it, but I think a lot of the times when you kind of just see all of these, news articles of people that have passed away due to like pedestrian accidents or like car accidents, and all of these different like really horrible stories, and it's very upsetting. It's very angering that a lot of it could have been prevented. And I think kind of channeling that into what the different type of like community work that I'm interested in doing and what that could look like, especially like on the west side of Salt Lake, where there's all these highways, a lot of these different like pollution sources, and knowing that this is impacting the whole state, but it's really impacting your community, and I think for that, that's kind of what you kind of see every day, like if you're walking or driving, and that's kind of what has kept, like, it's a very angering experience, but I think it's also what like drives you that it shouldn't be this way, that it could be different, and kind of envisioning like what it could be like.
Right. Curtis, anger in your life?
No, never.
Okay.
No, so not to repeat a lot of the things that have already been said, because I agree, but to kind of summarize it, at least in my mind, after several losses, and the anger that can kind of be associated with that, I know that my process definitely starts as kind of a wound licking experience, just kind of, okay, this has happened, this is terrible, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. But then it does start to come around, and it really does come to leaning on the other individuals that have gone through the same trials that you have just gone through. And then at some point, at least for me, I notice that there's always a click, and that click very much is why I'm doing this in the first place, right? Why did I bother? Why am I doing this to myself? And it inevitably comes back to kind of like the story that Alex told earlier, like we all have those stories that get us into advocacy in the first place. And Bianca, when you see those stories that are constantly popping up, and when you're fighting this behemoth like Ann is with the state and why everything needs to be changed, like I think back to that feeling and okay, we lost this one. What did we learn from it? Like we talked before, what was learned from that? And then how can we change our strategy? What can we do differently while still holding on to that? And so I very much kind of take that anger and the frustration and try to turn it into kind of a righteous anger and frustration, to really say, no, this is why I do what I do. And I lost this round, but they didn't kill me. So I'm going to keep on going, right? And so it's really whatever brought me to that in the first place that ultimately I come back around to and use that anger to get me to fight for another day.
Wow, beautifully said. Everyone, thank you. That was just, oh, wow, what a moment. So, class, what do you think? What are your questions? What do you have to add? What are your own observations? We have advocates in the class, so we are the panelists here don't have a corner on this, and to a certain extent, everybody's an advocate in one way or another. So, what have you observed in what you do with advocacy in your communities? What seems to work, and what have you learned from it? Anyone? Okay, I'm going to call on people if you don't volunteer. You know how that goes.
I kind of have a question.
Yeah.
So I've worked in advocacy in the past, but never in the state of Utah. So I have two questions for you. One, I feel like every state or community kind of has its quirks. So what do you find unique to this space in Utah in particular? And then second, what would be your advice for someone that wants to engage more like in this community? What were the avenues? What were the organizations? Those types of things.
Anyone on the panel? What do you think?
Oh, I can start off with that one. Utah is an odd duck, to say the least. even compared to other odd ducks. And it's largely due to the history and the founding of this state, to be perfectly honest, at least in my opinion. Utah was started as originally a way to get away from influence, but also with a great sense of community around it, right? And so that creates this weird, odd dynamic as far as advocacy is concerned, at least in my opinion. The grassroots, on the ground, people just want to chip in and get involved, I think is far more likely to take place in Utah than in other places. And I think that that's largely due to this sense of community that we have here. But it needs to be authentic. It can't be AstroTurf, right? And as long as it's authentic, I included my bio, I'm a native Utahn, and in some ways that's a little bit of a dog whistle to some people on purpose, right? I am one of you, I am here. Or if you're not, you throw in, hey, I've been here for so long and I care about X, Y, and Z. And so from an organizing standpoint, really kind of making sure that you're being genuine, not that people aren't, but being genuine is part of that. And then as far as getting involved and how to get started, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is in a lot of ways, there's probably an organization out there already that kind of matches what you're interested in, and you just show up. If there isn't, you will most likely find a community that agrees with you, and you can start to organize around that. Compared to even other states, I really do think that in some ways it's a whole lot easier to organize, it's a whole lot easier to advocate, but in some ways it's more difficult, as long as you need to make sure you're in with that group. But showing up and just doing it, I feel, is probably the biggest way to really get involved and do what you need to do.
Yeah, and
I think engaging with your adversary is so valuable. Getting to know these guys as human beings and understanding what their concerns are and their motivations are, and what, where they're coming from. And the more you meet together, the more the shutters fall off. Not shutters, what are they called?
Scales.
Maybe they are, yeah,
Shackles.
scales, thank you.
Scales.
But it really, the more you can connect with people who are not thinking along the same lines you are, so that you can understand them better, they can understand you, and you can form, over time, you can form a way to work together. You can find commonalities, definitely.
Yeah, my experience, I moved here for a short stint for 3 years. It was only going to be 3 years. And that was 25 years ago. And I'm still here. I haven't left yet. And one of the things that just confounded me was I moved here from Portland, which is, God's gift to urban planning. And I moved here and I thought, oh, it's going to be a very closed society, and I'm not going to, fit in, and not going to have opportunities to do much in the way of advocacy. And within, oh gosh, just a couple of years, I got a call from the mayor's office, and would I be the city's representative on the UTA Board of Trustees? Oh my gosh. In Portland, you've got to wait at least 3 generations before you get that phone call. And it happened, just in a couple of years. So in a way, there is, Marissa, I would say there's even more kind of accessibility to kind of policy advocacy here than other places. I would point to Alex's success with Sweet Streets. Sweet Streets has been around for just a precious few years, and they already have a huge success with the 20 is Plenty campaign. That is just, even from Utah's perspective, that is just awesome. You guys are really shaking it up. Other questions, other comments, observations? Yeah, no.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. And thank you, Professor Bartholomew, for having this class and making it open to the public. I'm not a University of Utah student. I'm a community student. So yeah, thank you all.
You're welcome.
And some of the things you've talked about is, working with others. And Professor Bartholomew, you've had us do these presentations describing the problems that we see and possible solutions. And there's a lot of kind of an agreeable, cooperative approach to it all, which I think is fantastic. I think that's the way to go if that's effective. And I'm wondering if you've had experiences where being disagreeable seems to be more effective, where possibly shaming lawmakers. You know, I'm a cyclist. I'm a cyclist, and as in, I'm not actually a cyclist. I just like to use my bicycle to get where I want to go. And most of the time, every time I go out, it's almost like I feel like I'm going to war. And that may sound dramatic until you look at the statistics where pedestrians and cyclists are getting killed. And I feel like a second-class citizen, truly. I feel like the whole structure is tailored to people in cars. They're the first-class citizens. If you're in a car, you're a first-class citizen. If you're on your 2 feet or you're on 2 wheels, you are lesser than, immediately lesser than. So I'm wondering if you have experiences where being disagreeable, lawsuits, shaming, or otherwise may be effective, although I'm not advocating for that as a first response, you know?
Well, Noel, you're talking to a lawyer here, and you know, when you've got a hammer, everything's a nail, and some of my best successes started in the courtroom, but they didn't end in the courtroom. In other words, I didn't get all the way to what I would call a success in the courtroom, but they started there, you know, and sometimes the 2x4 between the eyes is necessary to get the cow's attention. I'm going to turn to Ann on this because that's where the Legacy Parkway debate, if it didn't start there, it certainly had an important phase that was, some would say, disagreeable.
Gosh, it's been so long. I can't even think back to that time very well. But yes, it was disagreeable and there were sides. People took sides. But what really helped us was that with that very first gathering we had in 95 or whenever that was, we involved a lot of different coalitions and a lot of different groups who were doing different things. We kind of joined together. We started to count on each other to show up at certain meetings. So it was kind of like this loose group of people who were supporters, and they would support whatever, you know, it was needed at the time. I'm not saying this very well, but we didn't ever get into knockdown dragouts or anything like that. But
except in federal district court.
Well, yes, but that was on paper, you know. I mean, yeah, and it was a wonderful result to win that lawsuit. It was just great, and it gave us a lot of clout, and it also made the opponents look at us differently.
Yes,
it made a huge difference.
Yes,
so,
you built your credibility that way. People were like, okay, we have to deal with these folks now.
Right, and it also allowed us to add more people and organizations to our group, which strengthened the whole effort. So that was, again, that's why when you talked about what was the best result you had, that was so important because it came right at the beginning of when we were starting all of this. And we went through some periods of time where we lost and other periods of time where we won, but it gave us momentum to keep going and to gather other people to join us.
Other responses from our panelists?
With regards to shame, I do actually think that shame is a very unique tool in the political and policy sphere of Utah. In particular, especially when comments are made or when individuals that are in power falter. 2-3 years ago, I was working on some legislation around breakfast in the classroom for students. And this legislation was assigned to a committee that it shouldn't have been assigned to, natural resources, for whatever reason. Anyways, the chair of that committee made some pretty inflammatory and insulting comments with regards to children and having access to food at school. And then we immediately took that soundbite. I texted it to at least 6 or 7 journalists that are friends of mine, and we made that into a whole 2-deal media sort of bonanza. That state senator then apologized and actually has sort of changed their minds and thoughts on this over the last couple of years, and become a strong supporter as a Republican for universal free school meals. And so we can not only to be taking that opportunity to shame that individual, but they then leaned into it, learned more, and reformed their own position on the issue itself.
I'm going to weigh in on this just a little bit. I think some of the best advocacy is when you are kind of doing this 2-step where you have, sometimes the smiley face and sometimes the frowny face. And, so sometimes you are being aggressive or assertive, shall we say, and kind of in the face. And sometimes you are being disagreeable. But other times you're also, collaborative and open to kind of mutual problem solving. And I think, in a way, it kind of keeps your opponent a little bit off balance. If they can't paint you into one particular corner or another, I think that's to your advantage. I'll never forget I was in Portland, and it was the regional planning agency, the WFRC of Portland. It's called Metro. And I was before the Metro Council on an item. I was there asking them for a grant, a $40,000 grant to help with some research that I was working on. And this is just, about 3 or 4 months after I had won a lawsuit against them in court. And somebody on the council said, wait a minute. This person just beat our pants off us in court, and we're going to give him $40,000. And so I think that's kind of what you're aiming to do is to use anger. I'm not sure about shaming. I'm not sure about at least personal shaming. I think Alex's example, he wasn't confronting them directly. He was allowing the media to kind of handle that. And I think that's important, being right there in someone's face and shaming them directly. I'm not sure how effective that is. I think you can be very assertive and even aggressive without that kind of, ad hominem. What do they call it? Ad hominem attack. I
think that can come back to bite you later.
I think it
The
can.
problem with shaming is that at the time it gets that out of your system, but the repercussions are often not worth it.
Yeah.
Makes it harder to come together to work.
Matt, do you want to weigh in on this? You got something?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate something that came through the chat. How do you think advocacy benefits or doesn't benefit from tapping into politics? For instance, by teaming up with a political party or co-opting or using the messages that you commonly see in political campaigns like that. Do you ever find that effective?
Well, we've got 2 pros at it. No, Alex says no. Oh, really? Oh, wow. And these people should know. They've spent a lot of time in party politics. Kevin, what have you got for us? No, nothing, Kevin. Yeah, you had your hand up.
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, you are.
Sorry about that. I wanted to add that I think it's great if you can offer whoever you are negotiating with something of value, and to do that first, because then they owe you. And it's also important to listen to and try to get them to say what it is that they want so that they will do what you want them to do. Like, get them to state it if you can, put it in writing. But you know, if you can get whoever's on the other side to say, well, we need a certain number. What is that number? Get them to state it, you know, or we need to get X, Y, and Z done first, you know, get them to state that so that you can hold them to that and work on that and work on achieving that. And so that when it's done, you can say, you said this, and now we need to do this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, and you've heard me talk about this in class, I think what you are, it sometimes takes a long time to get there, but what you are shooting for is getting the person with power, the person who has control of over whatever it is that you're trying to push for, to get them to feel like they are part of the solution, that you are essentially providing an opportunity for them to kind of come in as a co-creator. And so you're not, you know, schooling them and whacking them about the ears, but you're showing them, well, here's a perspective on the world. Here is an issue. Here is a challenge. Here's an opportunity. And here's how I see it. And, you know, how can we work together to create a better option? For me, it took, with that example that I used from Portland, it took 10 years. The whole process was a 10-year long process. And it started off with some really disagreeable litigation. And that was necessary. I don't regret that at all, but that was necessary to get people to pay attention and to have those dialogues, and then eventually to lead to some sort of collaborative result. But it was a long campaign. Yeah, Dave, good. I was waiting for you. Go ahead.
In regards to like sort of strategy and, you know, whether aggressiveness works or shaming, I don't think personal shaming works at all. But I think the biggest thing that works is the power of ideas. And if you put out an idea that, especially if you put it out at the right time, that logically makes sense, that is doable, tractable, and you can, kind of along the lines of what Kevin was saying, this is a little hard as an advocate, but if somebody that's a politician decides to grab hold of it, they will make that idea their own. You're likely to not get a whole lot of credit for that, but it gets done. And that's often the way stuff gets done, both, you know, at the legislature and also just local politics. If you have the mayor, you know, say, well, I'm going to put forth XYZ, but you told the mayor about this, you know, and ask them in an email or something, and they take hold of that and do that, you may not get a whole lot of credit for that, but it'll get done. And that happened recently with me and the whole Vision Zero. I wrote the editorial that prompted Salt Lake City to adopt Vision Zero in January. I wrote the editorial in December and put forth the idea to the mayor and, you know, transportation and that, and it was at the right time. And when they had the press conference and that, you know, I was there, but, you know, she sort of said thank you after the meeting was over, but I wasn't invited up on the stage or anything. So it's kind of one of those things, like, it got done. I know why it got done, but that's something as an advocate, you kind of have to live with that. And, you know, it's not about your personal glory, or, you know, otherwise you'll be really frustrated.
You save those for the 3 beer events, I think.
Yeah.
Well, not to promote drinking necessarily, but I want to thank our panelists. Will we, everyone, provide a round of virtual or actual applause for our panelists for being here tonight? Thank you so much. It was just a fabulous discussion. One of my favorite sessions all semester. This has been just great. And so we're going to take our break. It's amazing how quickly time goes when you're having fun. And let's go ahead and take 10 minutes. It's 7:03 on my computer clock. So let's come back at 7:13. And at that point, we're going to do some practice runs on a handful of projects and talk about next steps next week. So you can all just click off for 10 minutes and I'll see you back here. Panelists, you're done. And thank you very much. You're welcome to stick around if you want to see some practice runs on some projects, but by no means are obligated to. So if you leave, please know that you do so with my heartfelt thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Key.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
Okay. We're all coming back. Clicking back on. What I want to do with the rest of our time, of course, is to give opportunity for a couple of the projects to do some practice runs. Lloyd saw your email message, so I'm putting you down for presentation on the 17th. Thank you very much. We are in the next 2 weeks, of course, making our final presentations to our panel. And I'll remind you who our panelists are. We have 2 members of the Salt Lake City City Council. Council member Darren Mono, who is from the Ballpark neighborhood, and Council member Ana Valdemoros, who is from the University neighborhood. She's from around here. Both of them are alums of our various programs. Councilmember Mono is an architect who came through our program, and Valdemoros, a planner who came through our program. We also have on the panel Carlton Christensen, who is currently a member of the UTA Board of Trustees. Carlton's had a varied career. He was formerly a member of the City Council. He was a council member years ago, and then left the council and has done a lot of work for the county. Worked in county government. I don't believe in an elected position, but I might be wrong about that. My memory is of course faulty. So those will be our 3 panelists. They have all said they want to be there in person. So, I mean, weather permitting, who knows what's going to happen with the weather, but weather permitting, they are going to be there in the room, in the classroom, in person. And of course, we're going to be running Zoom like we always do. And I know many of you are not in town, so that's, you do what you need to do. If you can be there in person, I think you get an extra little boost by being there, especially if you, the day that you're presenting. I sent around in my email from midweek last week a little graph table showing which projects were on which nights, and Lloyd has given me his additional project for the 17th. No one has corrected me, so if you saw something that wasn't right there, or you want to change something, please let me know just as soon as possible, because we're going to assume that you're going to present on the nights that I've indicated. In preparation for that, I'll be sending around an email midweek somehow. I'm traveling this week, but we'll need to get your slides. I know how to do this. We've already got that portal that you can drop slides into. Put your slides, if you're doing slides, I know Lucas, who can't be here tonight, is doing a film. We'll have to work out something for him. I think he can just drop it into that that Google Drive document as well. Put your finished slides as you want them to appear for your presentation on that Google Drive folder that you can link to from the front page of the Canvas page. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, I think. If you don't, let me know. That's the best way, because then we've already got the slides and we don't have to spend a lot of extra time messing with people's thumb drives and loading slides and so forth. We can just get right to it. And that's what we're going to do. My hope is we've got about the right number of projects. It's all worked out just beautifully, in my opinion, so that everyone's going to do their 5-minute presentation, and we will be strict about that. But there should be enough time for some dialogue, and that's the thing that is, I think, so valuable about the experience, is not just making a presentation, but getting feedback, because they're going to want to give you feedback. They're going to want to tell you, give you ideas on how to take your project idea forward and what next steps might be. And so we should have enough time in our schedule to make for a very interesting evening of discussion as well as presentation. So that is what we're planning here. Let's see. he provided you a link. Yes. So actually, if you go, Lloyd and everyone else, if you go to the, everybody can do this, right? Everyone can get to the Canvas page, right? If you go to the Canvas page, on the front of the Canvas page, you got to dial down because there's so much stuff on it. But there's in the middle of the page, there's a whole bunch of links. And one of those links is the link to the Google folder. And you can just go right there and then drop slides there. I think some people, Anna was telling me she was actually amending the slides in the Google folder. So you can just take what's there and work on it from there if you want. Oh, and there's the link. Thank you, Matt. That's great. Okay, so I think we're all back now. Yes, 26, that's right. Let's get started first, and I didn't give them advance warning, and so I apologize. But Kristen, what about starting with the park connection project? You good for that? Marissa, who else is involved in that one?
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be great. So it's Angeline and Maddie. That's right, Maddie and Marissa and Kristen.
Yeah. I don't think Angeline is.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
present.
I didn't think so either, but I just thought I'd say her name. Just in case, you never know. You don't want to leave somebody out, right? So, okay, so the three of you, I think you should be able to take over the screen. It should be set up that way. Let me know if that's not the case.
Sure. Mm. Okay.
Got it?
Yes.